Hello, I'm Andreas, your tech-curious web designer. This is a quick run-through how to deploy a Django app to a web server with the fundamental steps how to get the app up and running, including connecting to a Postgres database, a media server, and an email client. I will go through the steps quite fast, so if you want to know more about a specific topic, check out my tutorial series on deployment with Django for a more in-depth explanation. You find a link in the description below. Alright, with that said, let's start. If you got already a project ready to deploy, you can skip forward to around 4 minute 20. Otherwise, you can download my Django Starter project from my GitHub repository at github.com/ndjut/django-starter. If you're curious to know how I created this project, check out my Django Starter video. To get those files, you can click the download zip link here, or if you prefer, clone it with Git. For this, copy the URL. I opened here an empty folder called Django app with Visual Studio Code. And then I'm checking if Git is installed already with git-v. If you don't see a version number here, that means Git is not installed yet and you need to download it. Then to download the files, I write git clone, then I paste this URL, and then I add a space and a dot to place the folders and files directly to the root of my directory. This downloaded the files, and additionally it created also a hidden Git folder in this directory. But I will get rid of it because I will add a new one later on with GitHub Desktop. I can remove this folder with rm for remove-rf. This stands for recursive and forcefully, so we don't get any confirmation alerts. And then .git, the name of the folder. Alright. Next, we create a virtual environment. On a Mac, you write python 3-m vnv. This creates a vnv folder with the vnv module. And then I activate it with source vnv/bin/activate. Next, we use pip to install the project's dependencies. With pip install --upgrade pip, I make sure I have the latest version of pip. And then we install the dependencies from the requirements.txt file. Alright, Django and the other dependencies are installed now. Let's create a database with python manage.py migrate. We add a superuser. And now let's run the application with python manage.py run server. Okay, our Django app is now running on localhost :8000. I can log in with the admin user. Add the avatar image. And the display name. Alright. Lastly, I rename it to Django app. I open up my header.html file in the template folder and includes, and change here the title. Alright, our project is now ready for deployment. If you're interested to follow along in this tutorial with a cheat sheet with all the commands, become my Patreon and get it from patreon.com/AndreasChat. So first, let's set up our environment variables. For this, I'm installing the environ package, then configure it in the settings.py file, in the core folder, so here on top. From environ import env, and then we read from the env file. Then I set an environment variable, which gets the value from the env file. Okay, let's create this file now within the core folder. .env, and set here the environment to development. On the web server, we will change this later to production. We also add here the value for the secret key. I copy this string here without the quotes and paste it in here. To make sure the secret key is unique for your project, in case you have just cloned it from another project on GitHub, you can use the getRandomSecretKey function. For this, we open the shell with Python manage.py shell, get the function from django.core.management.utils, print the function, and then grab the secret key. To exit the shell, we write exit with brackets. And we add here the environment variable. Then I use the environment variable to toggle the debug mode. In development, debug is true, else debug is false. And until we don't have the live domain of the website, we include the asterisk in the allowed hosts to allow all the connections. We need this when debug is false, but we will change this later when we got the domain. Okay, save this file, and let's run the server again. Okay, all looks good so far. Let's change the environment to production now. I set the environment to production and save. I refresh the page. This should break our static images now. However, if you don't see any change, it means the website is cached in a browser and you need to perform a hard reload of the page. And with the hard reload, we see we lost the link to the image file, as Django does not serve static files when debug is false. For this, we need to install white noise. Pip install white noise. Then we add white noise to the middleware. And define the static root. White noise will serve images and files now from the static files folder. To copy all the static files to this folder, we use the collect static command. Python manage.py collect static. This created now the static files folder and made a copy of all the files there. Okay, let's spin up the server again and check it out. I hard refresh the page and we can see the icon for the logo now. A slightly different story are media files, such as the avatar image, which users can upload. We need a media server to store them, and I'm choosing Cloudinary as it offers some free storage. If you want to go with AWS instead, check out my AWS S3 video. To connect to Cloudinary, I install the Cloudinary storage package, add it to the installed apps, and then we configure our media storage. In development, I want to serve media files from my local media folder. And in production, I connect to Cloudinary. Let's save this file and create an environment variable for the Cloudinary URL. Now let's create an account on Cloudinary. So if you don't have a GitHub account yet, it would be best to create one now, as we need one later anyway, and we can use it to sign up to different web services. Here we go to dashboard. We grab here the API environment variable URL and add it to our env file. Okay, save this file and run the server to test it. I upload a new avatar image. And if we inspect the code, we should see the link to the Cloudinary server. Alright, next let's install Tailwind CSS. If you don't use Tailwind for your CSS, you can skip this part. At the moment we're using a Tailwind CDN to show the CSS. However, in production we only want to use the CSS classes we actually need. And for this I install Node to run the Tailwind CLI. So first let's check if Node is installed with node-v. A version number here means it is installed, otherwise you need to download it. Then I create a Node folder and cd into that folder. Now inside this folder I initialize Node with npm init-y. This created now a package.json file for our scripts. Next, I install the Tailwind CSS module. And as last, I will add a Tailwind configuration file with npx Tailwind CSS in it. In this configuration file, I add now the location of the files with Tailwind CSS classes. Tailwind will scan all the HTML files within the main templates folder, the templates folder within the apps, and the forms.py files. Next, I create the base Tailwind CSS file. I go to my static folder, into CSS here, and add here the file tailwind.css. Add here the Tailwind directives. And I also add my custom CSS styles. In my project, I have some in the base.html file. Let's get them and put them here. So in the templates folder, base.html, copy all the styles from here, and paste them in here. Here in the head, I add now my style sheet link, which is linking to a style.css file. This file will be created with a script. And we also get rid of the Tailwind CDN here. The styles need the static tag, so we need to load the tag on top of the page. Let's add the script now to the package.json file. So my script is called Tailwind and is taking the base Tailwind CSS file to build the style.css file. And with --watch, it is watching for changes and rebuilds the CSS file after a save. Now let's run the script with npm run tailwind. I let the script now running in this terminal and open a new one to run collect static. This will make a copy now of the style.css file in the static files folder. Now let's spin up the server to check the CSS. Refresh the page and inspect. And as we can see, the link with the CSS styles is working. This works great for development, but in production, I want to go a step further and use a minified version of the style sheet. Let's create now a script for it. I'll write here a comma. I call the script minify and use the clean CSS module to transform the style.css file into a style.min CSS file. Let's install this module. So a cd into node. Install the clean CSS CLI module. And then run the script npm run minify. This created now a style.min.css file here. And the code is very compact now to reduce the load time of the file. Then I go back to the root with cd ... and run python manage.py collect static. And to use this minified version only in production, I add a condition to the style sheets. I go to the head section in the base.html file. Then here I'm adding a condition to check if debug is true. In that case, I'm displaying the style.css file, else the minified version. And in order for this debug to work, we need to define the internal IPs. So we go to the settings file, and set this variable to my two local hosts. And additionally, to make it more clearer which environment is active, I display a marker in the title when in development. So I'm going to templates, to includes, to header, and here next to the title, I add this code to display dev when in development. Okay, save this file, spin up the server, refresh the page. So we are in the production environment at the moment. Let's check if the site is using the minify style sheet. Yes, it does. And let's check now also the development environment. For this I comment out the production environment and refresh. We see the dev marker now, and we have broken image links because we're not more connected to Cloudinary. Let's also inspect the style sheet. And it's using the style.css file. Great. The CSS is set up now. Okay, let's switch back to production. Next, we add a Postgres database. I pip install dj-database-url. With this package, we can add a database using a URL. Then pip install psycho-pg2 binary, so Python can communicate with a Postgres database. Then I add now a condition to switch databases depending on the environment. So in development, I would like to use SQLite database. And in production, I import the DJ database URL and create the link to the database. Let's add the URL to the env file. Next, we set up a database on a web server. I'm choosing render.com as my web server, as it offers a free tier for 90 days. If you want to use Railway instead, check out this video. On render, you can again sign in with your GitHub account. Here we create a PostgreSQL database. I give it a name. Choose the closest region. Select the free tier and create database. Then we copy here the external database URL and paste it here. Now we do a database migration and create the tables. Python migrate. And then we create the superuser. Now we spin up the server and check it out. We are connected to the remote database now. Let's upload an avatar image. Alright, next let's connect to our email client. So we can send email to users, for example to verify their email address. For this I'm using Gmail. If you want to know how to set up Gmail as your email client, check out my email setup tutorial. Okay, let's add some configuration to our settings.py file. Here we change the email backend from console to SMTP. Add the email host. Then the email host user. And the email host password. Let's add this to our env file. Here we add the email address and the host password we created on Gmail. Then we add the email port 587. Set TLS to true. Then we can set up a custom sender name. By default it will show the email address. And Django by default adds a prefix to the subject. I get rid of it like that. Okay, save this file and let's test it. I refresh the page and click verify. A confirmation email was sent now to my email address from a Gmail client. We received this email with the sender Django app name and hello from example.com. We can change this to our domain by using Django sites framework. So we have to add Django contrib sites to our installed apps. We have it already installed here. And it also needs the site ID of 1. Then we can go to our admin interface and change this domain. So sites. Here you put the domain of your website and the display name. And this is now reflected in the email. I click the link to confirm. And we verify the email address. Alright. Next, let's connect to GitHub. First I set up my git ignore file. This is a list of all the folders and files we don't need in production and also don't want to push to GitHub. The most important being the env folder with all our sensitive data. Then we update our requirements.txt file with pip freeze the greater than sign requirements.txt. And then I'm using GitHub Desktop to push the files to GitHub. You can download this tool for free. Or if you prefer, you can also use git commands directly in the terminal. Here first I connect to my GitHub account. So on settings, sign in. Then add an existing repository. Then here we click create a repository. This will create a new Git folder in our project. And then we publish repository. This will now create a repository on GitHub. On GitHub, we have now this new repository published, and we can set up a connection to a web server. For this, I'm using again render.com. I add a new web service, then build from a Git repository, connect to my GitHub repository. We use Python 3 as our runtime. It installs the requirements from our txt file. And here we add the start command, which for my project is gunicorn a_core.whiskey. We still have to install gunicorn in our project. Then here we choose the free tier. This obviously comes with some limitations like downtime after some time of inactivity. And lastly, we add the environment variables. We can click here Add from env to paste them in all at once. We change the environment to production. The secret key, as we can see, was cut off. Let's make sure the whole string is added. And then we click Create Web Service. Okay, here we can cancel the deployment now, as we still have to finalize a few things. For one, we have to add the domain, so we can grab the URL from here and add it to the allowed hosts. So here without HTTPS, so just the domain. And then I'm adding the CSRF trusted origins variable and add the URL. And we also install gunicorn. For some web services where we don't define the Python version and start command on the platform itself, we might still need to create a proc file for the start command or a runtime.txt file for the Python version. However, for render, those files are not necessary. Okay, before we push the files again to GitHub, we update the requirements.txt file and also run the collect static command. Now we push the files to GitHub, commit to main, and push origin. This is deploying now automatically on render. The deployment took around 2 minutes and it looks like it was successful. Let's check out the live site. And as we can see, our app is now up and running. And we can also log in with the admin. Alright, this was a basic deployment of a Django app to a web server, connected to a Postgres database, media server and email client. Thank you for watching and all the best for your deployment. I will see you in the next one. Until then, happy coding my friends, and bye bye for now.